Hey, welcome to The Feast Life, where we empower you, the modern homeschool mom, to create a life and homeschool you love. I'm Julie Ross, the creator of the award-winning curriculum A Gentle Feast, a homeschool veteran of over 20 years, and a certified Christian life coach. Charlotte Mason said, life should be all living, not a mere tedious passing of time. So on this show, we seek to savor the feast of life. So go get your favorite beverage and pull up a chair. You're welcome at this table. Who is knee-deep in preparing for next school year? Anybody yet? Don't worry, if you're not, it's all good. This will help make it so much easier for you. All right, if you stay with me to the end, I have some free scheduling cards to give you that are going to make this whole planning out your homeschool day so easy, and some other special bonuses to share with you. So I know it's summer and life is distracting. Like right now, I have the yard guy outside my window. Didn't know he was coming, but it's okay. So if you are able to close the tabs, turn off Instagram on your phone, and focus just for the next hour or so, we're going to be together, I hope that will be beneficial for you. So you are in the right place if at the end of your homeschool day, you have checked off all the boxes, but you still don't feel like you really accomplished anything. Or you're frustrated because there's never enough time to include all the subjects that you want, especially the ones that actually bring you joy. Or you want to do something other than school at home, but you're unsure of where to even start. You want to foster sibling relationships, but what you're currently using has you all separated. Or every day you feel like you're reinventing the wheel, trying to find some routine that's going to stick. The saying of throwing spaghetti against the wall to see if it's done, like when it sticks to the wall. If you have days where you feel like you're just throwing spaghetti against the wall, and by the end of the day you just feel exhausted, but the kids still want dinner, then you are in the right place. All right, so if I am new to you, welcome. I am so glad you're here. Real fast, just so you know who I am, I'm Julie Ross. As a former public school teacher, I also helped found a private Christian school. I've been homeschooling for 20 plus years. I'm a mom of 5 kiddos, and I am the creator of the award-winning curriculum A Gentle Feast, where I have helped thousands of families find this nourishing, life-giving approach to homeschooling. But it didn't always start out that way. So those are my 5 kiddos now. My oldest graduated college a year and a half ago. And then my second daughter is going to be a senior at the University of South Carolina next year. She's studying neuroscience. And then I have a 16, 14, and 13-year-old that I'm still homeschooling. And when I first started out homeschooling, I had this vision of what I wanted it to be like. I wanted us to read really great books and talk about them. I wanted us to feel close. I was an only child. A really big goal of mine in homeschooling my kids was that they would really grow closer together and that they would have good, strong sibling relationships. I wanted to allow them time to explore their own interests. I wanted them to be critical thinkers. But unfortunately, when I first started homeschooling, so when I started homeschooling my older 2 that were school aged, I had 3 kids under the age of 3. And because I was a former teacher, I just did what I knew what to do, which was school at home. We even said the pledge to the flag and had a little calendar time. Anybody else? And everybody, they each had their own workbook and textbook for every subject. And I was like going back and forth like a ping pong ball between the 2 of them all day long. Plus the little ones are flushing rocks down the toilet and doing these other things. And I just constantly felt like I was playing whack-a-mole all day long. And by the end of the day, I get exhausted and go, what do we even do? What learning is actually taking place here? And by year 2 of homeschooling, I was completely burned out and ready to throw in the towel. And that's when I was like, okay, there has to be a different way. There has to be a different approach to education than what I know, which is what I had been taught in my teacher trainings and what I had experienced in my own schooling. And that's when I really started diving into the writings of the educational philosopher Charlotte Mason. And back then, there was like a Yahoo group to talk to people and try to figure out, like, I couldn't even get her volumes. I had to wait for those to be shipped from England. Like, it was like this whole process, right? And so I had a lot of trial and error. And when I first started implementing her philosophy, I was reading about all these beautiful subjects that she included in her programs. And I'm like, yes, I want to do all these things. And so we started doing all the things. And then school was taking us till like 6 o'clock at night. And I'm like, what in the world? She said we're supposed to be outside enjoying nature, but this is taking forever. And then it wasn't until several months later when I read some more of her writing that I realized, oh, you don't do all the subjects every day. Like I had no guide or anybody like telling me this is how it's actually be accomplished. And so I had to, like I said, I had to figure that out myself. But it wasn't until I developed this kind of framework that I'm going to teach you today that it all clicked. I knew I wanted to do the things that she talked about. And we'd study some art here, and we'd listen to some classical music here, and we'd go on a nature walk there. And we'd have these like little bits and pieces of things that she talks about in her writings, but none of it ever really fit together and none of it felt really cohesive. And I always felt like I never actually getting to the things that I wanted to do. And so the framework that I'm going to teach you today allowed me to make this approach a reality in our home. And after doing it now for over 15 years, I can honestly say it has truly transformed our homeschool. It has transformed my children, and it has transformed me as a person and a teacher as well. So how has this approach changed my homeschooling? It gave us deeper connections. First of all, to the material, because of the wonderful rich books that we were reading, we were able to connect more to what we were learning about rather than just reading information from a textbook. It also allowed us to have deeper connections with each other. And I'm going to dive into this a little bit more as we keep going, but because we were able to have great conversations about books, because I was able to listen to my child and hear what was important to them from what I read, it bonded us more together. Because our family was studying the same time period together, it allowed deeper connections between my children, which is what I wanted in the first place. It also allowed for deeper insights because they were starting to think critically about what they were reading, starting to make connections from one subject to another subject, and that was enriching their educational experience. It also gave me a lot of peace and confidence. Before, I always felt like I'm doing something wrong, I'm missing something. What am I not doing that I should be doing? I was staying up till midnight on Pinterest trying to print out new things that were going to like magically solve all their problems. And once I had this framework, and it's like this became part of our natural rhythm and atmosphere of our home, I didn't feel that stress and anxiety anymore. It gave me a lot more confidence too, because I knew what to expect. Every day wasn't just a game of whack-a-mole or throw spaghetti against the wall anymore. It was like, oh, I know what I'm doing. Okay. And that gave me more confidence as a teacher. It also changed our affections for what is good and beautiful. And this is probably why I love this approach so much, because it really does change your heart that you desire to look at beautiful things, listen to beautiful things, learn beautiful things, have this wonder and curiosity that I wanted my kids to have in the first place. And it also changed me as a person. It made me want to pull off the side of the road and look at a bird. And we were at Dollywood last week. We pulled off the side of the road and we were looking at these wildflowers, and I got totally bit, y'all. I don't know what these things were. They were not mosquito bites, but they were like these little red bumpy things. Maybe somebody here knows, like all over my stomach, all over my back. And I'm like, okay, but it was worth it. We got to see those beautiful flowers, which is so not like me at all. If you would have known me 15, 20 years ago. So it has completely changed me and what I love as well. So Charlotte Mason, I'm going to quote her a lot because I love the view of children and what she has to say on this. She says, we are not unwilling to make efforts in the beginning with the assurance that by and by things will go smoothly. And this is just what habit is, an extraordinary degree pledged to effect. The mother who takes pains to endow her children with good habits secures for herself smooth and easy days, while she who lets their habits take care of themselves has a weary life of endless friction with her children. So when we are instilling good habits in our children, it allows our homeschool days to be smooth and easy. I use that phrase a lot, smooth and easy. It's like the rails on which a train runs. We're laying those down by what we're doing in our homeschool. And so the framework I'm going to teach you is all based on this concept of habits. And when you have these habits in place, it makes everything run smoother, rather than having this kind of weary, endless friction of what do we do now? How am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to do that? Once you have this routine and this framework in place, all the other pieces fall together so easily. So as you can tell, this is an old picture of us during morning time. And I'm going to read from the book For the Children's Sake. So if you've never read this book, this is the book that changed my whole world. So I highly recommend this book to everybody who is just starting out trying to look at this approach. If you have not read it, I highly recommend it. But she says routines form habits. Take the area of human relationships. Routines do not make the relationship, but they are the frame upon which we hang our experiences. Some families do not have a routine of eating meals together anymore. Any time goes for snacking. People rush about at 1,000 activities, any one of which could be good. But what is the sum total? Without the priority of a framework, which I'm reteaching you, nothing much happens. Few conversations, little times of togetherness. A family decides to read a book together whenever there is time. This invariably becomes no time. It is essential to have these basic routines. Children love routines. It frees their attention for the activity at hand. Later on, other routines help the children along. When planning routines, priority must be given to the most important things. The person matters, be it child, husband, wife, or friend. We need time to talk, read, relax, and work together. Our relationship with God matters. Where's the time to be found for that? I'm a part of his creation. Where will I find time to get out and enjoy nature? There is too much work to be done, and I am finite. I need to accept that reality and plan the time and priorities carefully. Y'all, now that I have adult children, I can tell you that the time does fly. And I look back and I'm so grateful that we had these routines in this framework to incorporate some of these really beautiful things, because these are the things that I know shaped my children that are now adults, that shaped them as people. Again, the reason we do this, the reason we have this framework and this routine, and I sometimes talk to people, they're like, I don't like to follow a routine. I just like to do my thing and go with the flow. And believe me, I'm one of those people. Like I said, I pulled off the side of the road the other day on the highway, like just driving down. I wanted to see the flowers. So I totally get that. But the routine, having a routine and framework makes it possible to do some of those rabbit trails or do some of those spontaneous things. But when we have no framework at all, our days feel like we're constantly being blown about and tossed about by the wind and the whim of our kids or whatever is happening in our lives. And so if we want to use our time wisely, we have to be purposeful, we have to be intentional, and we have to plan ahead of how we're going to use the time that we're given. As I was thinking through, okay, obviously me doing every subject every day is not going to work. And doing all these kind of Charlotte Mason-y things here and there and being out in nature and reading here and just, oh, I hope we have time where we can go do XYZ. That was never actually working. So I'm like, okay, I have to change this. I have to come up with some sort of framework here. And so Charlotte Mason talks a lot about that education is a feast. And she uses this food metaphor a lot. And so it got me thinking, maybe I could organize our days like you would organize a feast. And if we take a 4-course meal and we organize our days like that, will make us have a rhythm and routine that we can then fall into place and put the different pieces in. Because with this approach, right, it's not use this workbook, do page 75, answer these 5 questions. If you want a life-giving education that is actually nourishing your whole child, like it's different. So how do we actually fit all of this into our day? And when I finally came up with the idea of, oh, it's just like a 4-course meal, it was like light bulb.
If you want, you can have
Now
an
I can
earbud until we get
this
there.
work, which is so important. So let's dive in. Okay, so think about like your favorite like restaurant here. Okay, we're gonna go fancy people. I want you to think of, if you've ever been at a fancy restaurant where you have the 4-course meal. Okay, so what are we gonna start off with? So we're gonna start off with the appetizer. So when I'm thinking through our school day, the appetizer is morning time. Now, for me, this was super helpful. I had heard someone say this once somewhere when I went to some homeschool convention or something, probably, that you should start your day off with whatever the most difficult thing is. So I thought that was great advice. I came home and we started doing our homeschool day with the subject I thought was the hardest, which was math. I'm like, okay, we're going to get math out of the way. We're going to get it done with, no problem. And of course, my 2 girls didn't really think that was a great idea. And I didn't really either. You know why? Because none of us like math. And it would be like the equivalent of someone like handing me a mop when I got out of bed first thing in the morning, the mopping the floor is like my least favorite chore. And that doesn't make me want to get out of bed in the morning. I'm not super excited to get out and start mopping. And my kids weren't super excited about stopping playing or whatever it was they were doing in the morning and come sit down and start math. And so I was like, okay, this is not going to work. And if that's working for you, great. That's awesome. But for me, that did not work. And so I was like, I don't want to start our day off like this. I don't want to start our day off arguing. I don't want to do like the hard thing first to get it out of the way. I want to start off our day with something that's beautiful and makes me want to come start school and be together and feel that connection. And Charlotte Mason included several beauty subjects, and was what I call them, because they're very like full of like art, music, poetry. They're very beautiful. But she had them throughout her day. So I first started trying that, like I was saying, and it'd be like, I felt like I was herding cats. Like one kid's reading over here, one kid's doing this, my little ones are here playing with blocks. And I'm like, oh, now we have to look at this picture for 5 minutes. Everybody come back. And it was like, this is not working. So what if I put all those subjects together and we did them first thing in the morning? And we started off with it actually was most nourishing to us. So that's how I came up with this concept of using morning time. So I highly recommend you have a start time to your school day. If we try to do too much before we start our morning time together, again, it was like herding cats. Everybody's off doing chores or doing this or doing that. I would play beautiful music and I would light a candle and I would have something good for them to eat. Believe me, I'm a big fan of feeding my children when I'm trying to read to them because it keeps them quiet. So having something good for breakfast during the morning time, super easy way to get some reading of your Bible while they're chewing on their food. And this is really key because even if the whole day goes south, you have fed them with really what is the most important, right? We start our day off with Bible, you fed their souls, and then you've also given them something beautiful that's put them in touch with their creator. So Charlotte Mason said, it's not too much to say that a morning in which a child receives no new idea is a morning wasted, however closely the little student has been kept at his books. And that was so convicting for me when I read that because I have been really good at keeping my students at their books. We had a book for everything. We had a textbook and a workbook for every subject. And they were spending hours and hours a day doing these things. But it was a waste because they were never given any inspiring idea. And so when you're thinking through your morning time and what you want to include, again, I am just sharing with you some ideas here. Okay, this is not thou shalt do all these things. Okay, just want to put that out there. If some of them sound great, try it. If you're like, nope, ain't doing that, that's totally great too. Like you need to know yourself and your unique family. So I am just sharing ideas here. Okay, so these are some of the things I include in morning time. Now, these are, like I said, subjects that Charlotte Mason included throughout her day. I just smushed them all together in morning time so we would actually get to them again, because if I waited till we had time to get to them, we never actually ever got to them. Okay, so we start off with our Bible reading. Then we do singing, folk songs, hymns, things like that. Composer study is learning about a composer and listening to several pieces of their music. Charlotte Mason picked 3 different composers a year to study. Same thing with picture study. So you're going to pick an artist, 3 of them per year, and you're going to look at 6 or so of their paintings. Recitation is not something we have in school anymore. So you probably have not heard of this one. So recitation was actually a subject in Charlotte Mason's time in the early 1900s because they didn't have TikTok back then. So how did you entertain yourself on a Friday night? People would stand up and they would recite. They would recite speeches, poetry. If you've seen Anne of Green Gables, I'm a huge fan. Like she wins the recitation award for reciting the poem. But what it does is it allows your child to learn to speak clearly, to read with emotion and enthusiasm, which helps with public speaking, which we all know is extremely important on today's world, right? Poet study, so learning about a poet and study, just like you do with artist study and composer study, learning about several of their poems. You could do a read aloud during morning time, fables, folk tales, Shakespeare biographies. Those are all great things to read in the morning time. But here's the key. Other than Bible, you're doing all these other things only like once a week. So again, I was trying to do them all in one day. which was taking forever. So here's some really key, just Bible and one other thing. That makes it doable. So like in 25, 30 minutes, we can have our morning time, Bible and one other thing, Bible and one other thing. And the way I do it is I just go through my one other things in a row. And that way, if somebody's throwing up in the morning and we don't get to picture study on Tuesday, it's okay. It doesn't have to be on Tuesday. I just know the next time we're together, we're going to do picture study. Okay. So that's why I love this framework so much, because it's not this strict schedule that like I have to do this at Tuesday at 10 o'clock, because I don't know if your life is like my life, but Tuesday at 10 o'clock, you just never know what's going to happen around here. So we have to have a rhythm, a framework that is flexible at the same time. So this is not a rigid thing, but I actually have been doing this for years now. We have learned so many different composers, so many different artists. We've sung so many songs. We were joking at Dollywood because they were playing Oh Susanna, and my kids were like, "Oh, Mom, you remember when we learned this when we were little?" They remember this stuff. And it has these funny shared family memories, which is so important to me as well. And so you can do so much when you do just a little bit at a time. It doesn't feel so overwhelming and so daunting. Okay, here's the really cool part. I dug into this like a year or so ago. So my daughter, like I said, she's studying neuroscience. So we're like talking about this. What morning time actually does, it's not a waste of time. It actually prepares your child's brain for the rest of the day. How cool is that? Okay, so studies have shown that singing improves your memory. So we sing some songs in the morning to get our memories going. Looking at a piece of beautiful artwork and studying it in detail and then being able to talk about it, that's what picture study is. It increases your child's attention, which we need for the rest of the day. Listening to classical music releases dopamine, which is the happy chemical. Don't you want to start your day off feeling like good? And then listening to poetry, listening to beautiful read alouds develops a child's imagination and their ability to think critically. So all of these things that you do in morning time, plus just the foundation of scripture, is preparing their heart, soul, and mind for what you're going to be feeding them the rest of the day, which is so cool. But here's the thing, y'all. Morning time is just the appetizer. I talk to people and they're doing like 75 things during morning time, and morning time takes an hour and a half. Believe me, it is so tempting because I don't know. This doesn't happen to you where your like kids are like playing so nice and you're like, you don't want to interrupt them to tell them it's time to start school because it's, oh my gosh, they're playing. So, oh, look at them. They're so cute. They're playing together. He's sharing and that's so sweet. And you're like, it's okay. I know it's time to start school. We're just going to wait like another 20 minutes. And then by 20 minutes later, everyone's in tears and fighting, right? And they're like, okay, now fine. We're done. No more Legos. We're starting now. Am I the only one? Okay. Well, that used to happen to me too. And then I just started blaming the clock. Oh, the clock says 8:30. Sorry, we're gonna have to stop now. It's school. That wasn't my fault because clock. Yeah. But same thing with morning time. It's so tempting because we're sitting here and it's so beautiful and we're listening to beautiful music and everybody's happy. Oh, we can just add one more thing and then one more thing. Like, so one more thing. And then it's an hour and a half later and now everybody's crying and everyone's fighting and we're just in a really bad mood. Start on a good note. Okay. So just having this kind of appetizer, just like when you go to a restaurant, right? I have this problem. I love Mexican food. It's my favorite. I will eat so much chips and salsa that by the time the actual meal comes, I don't want to actually eat any of it, but I force myself to eat it because I love Mexican food. And then I feel like I'm going to be sick. Anybody else? Yeah. We don't want to do that with our kids. We don't want to feed them so much in this morning time that they're stuffed. Okay. It's just appetizer, just a little bit. Keep it short, under 30 minutes. Okay. All right, so now let's move on to the next course. Okay, our soup and salad course. And I put language arts in here, the soup and salad. Soup and salad is light. It's providing a lot of nourishment though, in a little portions, okay? Salads are so good for you. The soups are so good for you, so hearty, okay? But we're just getting a little bit of it. Again, it's not to fill us all up here. And the way I was doing language arts before, we had a workbook for vocabulary, a workbook for spelling, a workbook for grammar, a workbook for handwriting, a workbook for actual writing. And that was for each child. And each one took 45 minutes. And I wondered why I was so exhausted. I don't know. So the thing that like was so revolutionary for me when I looked at Charlotte Mason's approach was like, oh, this is supposed to be holistic. We're supposed to learn these language things in the context of what we're already learning. So I don't need all this extra stuff that's going to take us all this extra time, because we can learn spelling and handwriting and grammar concepts in the context of what we're already doing here. And so it cut down on so much time and so much battling. So Charlotte Mason had writing integrated into the main subject. So I'll talk about that when we get to the main course here and those subjects. But writing wasn't a separate subject. It was included. You are writing in everything that you're learning all day long. So we don't need a separate subject for that. Okay, and then the way that she taught spelling, reinforced grammar, taught handwriting was through a practice called copywork and dictation. And this wasn't just her. If you look at textbooks from the early 1900s, this is how it was approached. Copywork is basically choosing like a poem, a speech, an excerpt from one of the books that you're reading and copying it, just like it sounds. So you're learning your handwriting, you're looking at the words, you're spelling them. And then dictation is at the end of the week, asking your kids or telling your kids what the passage says. I'm just going to make up something here, like Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. And they're going to write that from memory. So that shows that they have internalized the spelling, the handwriting, the capital letters, periods, those kind of things. And it's a process. It's not as easy as when you have a language arts workbook where it's like 1 through 10, you got 9 out of 10 right. Woohoo! Now I know that you know this. Copywork and dictation is a slower process, but what was so hard for me at first was I was so inconsistent with this. The way that Charlotte Mason talks about it is having the kids choose their own passage from what they were reading. Of course, my kids were choosing this one sentence that didn't have any hard words in it. Or it would take them 4 hours to find I still haven't found the passage yet, Mom. I'm still finding the passage when I get to it. And it was like, okay, I just have to have these passages picked out ahead of time here. And so we can go about that like that. So that's how I design my language arts. But again, look at what you're doing. Can you incorporate those concepts in a holistic way so you're not having to do separate things for every subject here? Okay, so that's the language arts. Again, giving you so much nutritional value and just a little bit.
Today's episode is brought to you by A Gentle Feast. A Gentle Feast offers a complete living books curriculum, an award-winning early reading program, and more tools to equip you to apply Charlotte Mason's timeless philosophy into your modern homeschool. Go to agentlefeast.com to check it out. Smooth and easy days are closer than you think.
All right, now we get to move on to the fun part. Yes, the main course, okay? This is where the meat is, okay? So we've had a little bit in our morning time, and it's gotten our brains ready, just like an appetizer gets your stomach ready to digest the rest of the stuff. Okay, then we got like our little nutrition going on with our language arts. And then we're going to move into our main course. So language arts for us, it just depends on the grade level, but like you can do copy work in 5 to 10 minutes. They can practice their spelling words for 5 to 10 minutes. They can look at some beginning kind of grammar concepts, 5 to 10 minutes. So like language arts is less than 30 minutes, where like I said before, I was doing all these different workbooks. Each one was taking 30 minutes. By then you don't want the main course. By then you're so completely stuffed and burnt out and everybody's tired and it's right. And so we don't want to get to that. We want to get to the main course still hungry. We want our kids to still be hungry, to still want more of what they're going to learn. Now, when it comes to the main course, what's really key for you to think about is what actually feeds your children. I'm going to let you know. I'm going to give you a little hint here. Actually, let me read the Charlotte Mason quote first. She says, in saying that education is the life, the need of intellectual and moral, as well as physical sustenance is applied. The mind feeds on ideas. Therefore, children should have a generous curriculum. So we're not just feeding our children's minds. This isn't just about academics. We're feeding them as moral, spiritual beings. We're feeding them as physical beings and feeding their minds. Seeing the child as a whole person is what you're offering your child in the main course, feeding them as a complete person. And then she says the mind feeds on ideas. The opposite of ideas is information. I used to think that the only way to properly grow and care for this child is to stuff as much information as possible, because that's what I had learned as a school teacher. We have these standards, we have these things we have to cover, make sure the children know it, stuff it, stuff it, stuff it, stuff it, so they can pass the state test. That was like my model. And so I went into that with my kids. How much can we learn? Here are the 5 things you need to know about this lesson. Okay, let's say them 6 more times. Let's put them on the wall. Let's put them on flashcards. Let's go over them over and over. This is what you need to know. Rather than when you feed on ideas or what are life-giving. So she says education is a life. If you want to create a life-giving homeschool, that's the name of this class, you have to feed your children with ideas. She says if we feed children information, it's like filling them up with sawdust. It clogs the machine. It keeps the machine of their brain going. It gets clogged. Think of a scarecrow that could be stuffed, but it's not real. It's not living. Okay. So feeding our children with ideas instead of information. Another thing that doesn't feed a child's mind is busy work. So I actually saw a Facebook ad like last week, and I don't even remember what the product was, but it was like, keep your kids busy all summer long. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't want to keep my kids busy all summer long. I want my kids to be bored. I want them to use their imagination. Plus, if it's my job to keep them busy, that's exhausting, right? I gotta feel like I'm like leading a circus around here. I do feel like that a lot of the times, but like I'm the circus master and I have to be the one entertaining everybody and coming up with this. What happens is we condition our children to look to someone else to keep them busy. They don't know what to do with themselves when they're not busy. I don't want my kids to be like that. That's how I am as an adult, because that's how I was trained in my school, that like I have to constantly be doing something and I constantly have to be busy and working for something. And I can't even sit. I don't want that for my kids. I want them to be able to just sit and look at a tree and sit and listen to a book and sit and know what to do to nourish their own minds without me constantly having to tell them. Feeding your child a bunch, or having your child do a bunch of busy work so it looks like they're learning something, isn't actually feeding their mind. Okay, so I wanted to give that clear distinction here. We're feeding them ideas, not information or busy work. So where do we get these ideas from that we're supposed to be feeding them? Well, good news. If you like books, the very best books. So instead of textbooks, which are full of information, facts, have a lot of busy work, have a lot of activities and things the kids are doing after they finish the lesson, we're just going to read them really great books. So she says to introduce children to literature is to instill in them a very rich and glorious kingdom, to bring a continual holiday to their doors, to lay before them a feast exquisitely served. Don't you just love that picture? I want to lay before my kids this feast, right? So the feast is the books that we're choosing and using. Rich books that are going to feel like they are on a continual holiday, a glorious kingdom. We're talking about things that are beautiful. Again, this life-giving. And this, one more thing of vital importance, children must have books. Living books, the best are not too good for them. Anything less than the best is not good enough. So this is what they must have. This isn't like an optional thing. Oh, this would be nice. This is what is going to feed them. She uses the term living books because they're full of ideas. Ideas live and grow. They're books that, like, you read them, they nourish your heart, mind, and soul. They're books that feed us. They're books that change us as a person. Now, sometimes they do teach us information at the same time, like a lot of the history book or like a chemistry book. They're living, they're real books. Like you could get this book from the library, it's not a textbook, but it's told in such a way that it captures your imagination and it feeds and changes you as a person. I remember I interviewed my daughter. We went to Ambleside, England. Oh gosh, how long ago was that? 2 or 3 years ago? As her senior trip when she graduated. Okay. If you all get nothing from this talk, write this down. When your children graduate from high school, you get to go on a trip with them. Because you deserve it, because you worked really hard. So write that all down and save that, put it somewhere for when they graduate from high school, okay? And you can thank me later. I did let them pick where they wanted to go, but I was like, this is a trip for me, man. I'm celebrating me. We're celebrating you too, because you like graduated high school, but let's just say who like did a lot of this is me. So I get to come on this trip too. So the two of us took trips. It was wonderful memories. But anyway, we went to Ambleside and I asked her in the podcast interview, what was your favorite book out of all the books of 12 years of school together? Like, which one was your favorite? And what she said was so surprising to me. The book was The Girl of Limberlost by Jean Stratton Porter. And I was like, really? That's interesting. Because that was a book that was used for natural history in high school. So she read that, I think, when she was a junior in high school. And I said, why that book? I'm really surprised that that was the book. And she said, because that book changed me the most as a person. And that's what these books do. Is a book for natural history, which seems odd, but the way it was written was so living and so life-giving that it changed her as a person. So that's why the very best books are so key to have in this piece that you're offering your children. Okay, what else do we need in the main course? We need books, and then our children are going to tell us about the books. This is really simple, people. I was like, wow, am I missing something here? Because is this enough? I really think we need some workbook questions to make sure that we're learning. And I'm just gonna be honest, it took me a while to embrace this because I was like, surely this cannot be enough. Narration is so powerful. What it is when your child reads or you read to them, they come back and they tell you about it. Again, sounds so easy, but go try to read Charlotte Mason's writings for yourself or go read like Dickens and try to tell somebody about it. And you're like, oh, wow, this is actually a lot harder than I thought it was. But here's why it's so powerful. Because God created us as humans to want to tell stories. This is a part of who we are as people. So we're using that as a tool for education. We are going to harness this natural ability. And I know your kids do this, right? My kids used to do this. They go to a friend's house, they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, mom, let me tell you about blah, 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 blah. Or they go see a movie. What was the movie about? They tell you all about it. We want to tell people what we know. That's why I'm teaching here today. I'm just kidding. So we're going to use this as a tool for education because really it is the only tool that you need. We don't need to ask someone 10 questions to make sure they know something. If you can tell me about this, if you have a friend who's, hey, I missed Julie's talk, what was it about? And you can talk to them about it, then you actually know it. And if you can't, then you don't really know. And so we want to use this tool in our homeschooling. So Charlotte Mason said, narrating is an art like poetry making or painting because it is there in every child's mind waiting to be discovered. I love that. It's there. It's inside your child. It's innate in who they are. But this is what makes it so powerful. It's not easy. A child must generalize, classify, infer, judge, visualize, discriminate, labor in one way or another with that capable mind of his until the substance of his book is assimilated or rejected, according as he shall determine, for the discrimination rests with him and not with his teacher. Listen to all these higher level critical thinking skills your child is doing when they narrate. They're generalizing, classifying, infer, judge, visualize, discriminate. They're not recalling. That's what workbook questions ask. What was the name of the river that they crossed? Or what was the name of the villain in that scene? Or how did so-and-so act when they went into the new school? All of those are recall kind of questions. When your child has to take in what they've heard or what they've read themselves, and they have to decide what's important, what's not important. What order did these things happen in? They're visualizing what's going on in their minds. They're judging what's important, what's not important. Those are all such higher level critical thinking skills. If that's what you want to develop in your children, use narration, not with a bunch of other stuff. Just this is so powerful. It's a hard process. I could talk about narration, actually have a whole hour talk about it because people have lots of questions, but it comes down to this simple thing. You're giving them the best books and they're going to talk to you about them. And if you could do those simple things and get that going, then you can just see how amazingly powerful this is. Another thing you need to keep in mind when you're thinking about planning out your homeschool day and thinking about this main course is this concept of short lessons. Like I said, when we were all doing for every subject a gazillion textbooks and workbooks, we didn't have short lessons. Like I said, a vocabulary lesson for a second grader was taking 45 minutes. Our brains are not made to hold attention that long, even adult brains. I work for 25 minutes. I work in 25-minute chunks. That's all I can pay attention to. And then I have to go take a break and then I come back refreshed. And it's the same thing with our children. If we're coming from this mindset again, where we're having to stuff as much information as possible into them, or that we have to keep them as busy as possible, then short lessons don't sound that appealing. Surely if we keep going longer, they're going to learn more. We have to keep going. We have to make sure this is done. And it's actually so counterintuitive. It's actually during these short lessons that they're actually able to really digest what they're learning. So Charlotte Mason put it this way: lessons are short, seldom more than 20 minutes in length for children under 8. And this is for 2 or 3 reasons. The sense that there is not much time for his sums or his reading keeps the child's wits on alert and helps him fix attention. So when you have who knows how long to complete this assignment, you're going to take who knows how long to complete that assignment. Having timetables for our children, again, it's not this rigid thing. I want you to see it as more, you're giving your children a tool. This is what I do as an adult to help me focus and work. I set a timer. I work in chunks. And it's the same thing for our kids. You can pay more attention to something when you know you have a limited window to pay attention to it. But if I know I have all day to write these emails or do these things for my job, I take all day to do them. We want to train our children that this is the time that we're going to do this copy work. You have 10 minutes. I only need your attention for 10 minutes. Let's go. You can do this. Or even shorter. When my kids were really little, we started with 2 minutes and we worked our way up. All right. And then she says, if the lessons be judiciously alternated, sums first, say, while the brain is quite fresh, then writing or reading, or some more or less mechanical exercise by way of a rest, and so on. The program varying a little from day to day, but the same principle throughout: a thinking lesson first and a painstaking lesson to follow. The child gets through his morning lessons without any sign of weariness. So you're alternating when you're looking through, and that's why these scheduling cards are going to be so helpful for you to think through, like how you want to do your main course. A thinking lesson might be like listening to something and having to talk back about it, like listening to a history lesson and then having to talk about it. Whereas a painstaking lesson, it is all, again, depends on your child, might be math. Okay. So we listen to a history lesson and then we do math. And then we listen to a geography, or your child reads a geography book. And then maybe we do not copy work, like a map thing or something like that. So they're going back and forth using different parts of their brain is important to think about. So things that are using a lot of their attention to something restful. And again, this is, you're an adult and you have a job. We all have jobs. We're homeschooling kids. Let me rephrase that. If you have another thing you're doing on top of the job of homeschooling, another job, or just managing like your household, this is so important. Okay. What do I really not like to do? I don't like to pay the bills. Okay, so I'm going to pay the bills. I'm going to set the timer for 25 minutes. All I'm going to do for 25 minutes is pay the bills. You're going to get through a lot more paying bills in that 25 minutes than if you're just like, oh yeah, when I have time, I'll get around to paying the bills, and it doesn't happen. And if you alternate that, okay, I'm going to pay the bills, but then when I'm finished, then I can go on Amazon and buy all the stuff we need for our trip. Because to me, that's fun. So, okay, I can do this for 25 minutes because I know after that, I'm going to do another activity. It's not like I'm going to go eat bonbons and watch Netflix, but I'm going to do another activity that for me is like really thinking through that for your children, or for you, like I said, as an adult, when you're trying to like think through your task, or I got to go mop the floor. I'm going to, my least favorite chore, but I'm going to set a timer. So I only have to do it for 20 minutes. I can do this for 20 minutes. And then afterward, I get to do the chore I really like, which, like, again, is online shopping. Okay. Then what's the last course? Of course, we have dessert. Okay. So dessert are these afternoon occupations. So because we're having short lessons, we can get through a surprising amount of material on a really deep level in a shorter period of time, so that we are actually finished with most of our lessons by lunch, even though my kids are now in high school. And then we can have time for these afternoon occupations, and they can be various. Okay. As they get older, I like to give my kids a little bit more, like in high school, I like to give them a little bit more say of, okay, what do you want to choose to do from these ideas? Or what ideas do you have for something that you could do in the afternoon? But here are some ideas of things that we've done. We read aloud. I like to bring my kids back together at the end of the day. So during this main course time, depending on their ages, they might be doing some of this stuff independently. If you have young ones, obviously some of this, or a lot of it, you're going to be doing with them. So I like to bring, if I have older kids that have moved to different areas downstairs, bring them back and have a read aloud that we can just enjoy together and end our day on a good note. This is what is key. This is why a framework is so important, because even if things got out of whack here and there, and this thing happened out of the ordinary, or we had to go to this appointment, or this person stopped by, like we still have our end. We had our morning time and we have our end. So think of how can you end your day on a sweet note? Get it? Dessert? Yeah. Okay. Something that actually like feels good to you, not, oh, we're done and you're going off here and this child's going off here. And now I've already started prepping dinner. And oh, yeah, I guess school's over. Like having some sort of definite stop time to your day. It doesn't have to be the same time every day, like I said, in case something happens, but just be like, okay, guys, like in 30 minutes, school's over. We're going to meet back up and we're going to do something. So read aloud. I like to do it that way. Poetry tea time is basically just reading poems over tea. Very simple. Nature study is great if you want to do some watercoloring, look at some nature things. If you wanted to do a nature walk, handicrafts, doing something with their hands, learning a skill. So valuable. Like I said, as they get to be teenagers, I started letting them pick, what do you want to do? What's something that interests you? Play is not like an extra thing. When they're little, especially, they are learning so many skills through playing. Chores can be in the afternoon, teaching them how to cook, teaching them how to mop the floor. Very important activities. And then interest-led activities, again, like what is something that is interesting to them? Having time in the afternoon for that exploration is so vital and important. And then we have our 4-course meal, but we're going to get thirsty, right? As the day is going on, you need to be filling your own cup. So don't forget to have a beverage when you're planning out your feast. You need to be nourishing yourself as well. Charlotte Mason put it this way: there is no sadder sight in life than a mother who has so used herself up in her children's childhood that she has nothing left to give them in their youth. Then when her children come to that most difficult time between childhood and full development, she is nonplussed. And though she may do much for her children, she cannot do all she might if she, as they were growing. Is there not some need for mother culture? But how is the state of things to be altered? So many mothers say, I simply have no time for myself. I never read a book, or else I don't think it is right to think of myself. They not only starve their minds, but they do it deliberately, with a sense of self-sacrifice, which seems to supply ample justification. One of the greatest gifts you can give your children is for you to be growing while they are growing, for you to be feeding your own heart, soul, and mind as well. This is why I love this approach so much, because this stuff is life-giving for me. If you think what you're doing with your kids is boring, they probably think it's boring too. If it's not feeding you as a person, this probably isn't feeding them as a person either. And using this approach, I have learned so much. Like I said, my affections for things I never thought I would like, classical music, y'all. Like all these things, that my heart has changed to them as we've done this for many years now, right? It wasn't like a first time thing of, oh, I love this. I love Shakespeare. That wasn't the case at first. It was changing my affections and I was growing as well. So when you're planning out your school day, when are you going to get your beverage? And this is just for you. Okay. So maybe it's before morning time with your kids, you're having your own morning time and you're spending time in the word, or you're spending time journaling or doing something that's super nourishing to you. Even if it's just 5 minutes, y'all, 5 minutes is going to change your homeschool day. Trust me. Another way I used to do my beverage is when my kids were young, after lunch, they would have rest time. And I would set a timer. Again, the timer, having a definite time for things is so important. I would set a timer for 15 minutes. I would light a candle. I would make some tea, and I would allow myself to sit down and read a book for 15 minutes. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do laundry or do the dishes or like all the million to-do lists that we have as homeschool moms. But I made myself sit down for 15 minutes and nourish myself and fill my own cup. Now my kids are older, so we don't have rest time, so I don't do it then, but I do it right before I go to bed. I have my journal and my book right on my pillow. So as soon as I lay down at night, oh, I can't go to sleep because I just hit my head on this. And it makes me spend, again, I'll set a timer for 15 minutes. I just need 15 minutes to fill my cup. You can fill your cup in 15 minutes. But most of us just wait until we like, oh, I'll do that when I have time. I'll do that when everything else is settled and everything else is easy. No, you're going to get dehydrated if you don't have a beverage. Going to get an amen. So fill your own heart, soul, and mind at some point during your day as well. So those are the 4 courses in your day. So you have your appetizer, your morning time, just enough to get your minds ready for the school day. You have your language arts, your soup and salad can be so easy when you're doing writing in the context of narration with your main subjects. Then you have your main course, it's all the subjects. And then you have your dessert, your afternoon occupations, adding in something to end your school day. These can also be, as your children get older, they can do a lot of these dessert type activities on their own, and you can just give them a checklist to see how they're doing. All right, so I'm not sure why you came today. Maybe you're frustrated with the traditional approach to education and you want to provide your family with truly living ideas. It could be you feel like your days, like I said, are constantly blown about by the wind and you just want, what is a consistent routine that we can have? Or perhaps you were bored and you just wanted to hang out with me in the air conditioning. That's totally cool too. But whatever it is of why you came today, I hope this has given you some food for thought, get it, that you can help with as well. So please remember the things I've shared with you today, they're not theory or fluff of what might work. This is exactly what I've done in my homeschool to nourish my own 5 children. And I've helped thousands of parents achieve a joyful and peaceful homeschool as well using this framework. So it doesn't matter if you're a newbie and you're just completely starting out, or you've been doing this for 20 plus years. You can incorporate this framework to your day and then start to add in pieces to what you're already doing. You can create the smooth and easy days that you're looking for. It is possible. Having a framework, again, it's not like to go and suffocate you and make you feel like it's rigid, right? But it's going to give you freedom once you are in it. It is so nourishing. It is a feast. It is this beautiful 4-course meal that you get to enjoy with your children. What a gift this is, right? What a blessing that we get to sit with them and enjoy all these beautiful foods day after day after day that are feeding their mind and feeding our minds as well. So do you think this framework will help simplify your homeschool? So I use a concept in my own personal life and in my work life called time blocking. And that's how I developed this 4-course meal for a gentle feast as well. It's time blocking. It's basically where you're creating buckets in your day, and then you're filling those buckets with the different activities. So me thinking through our homeschool day as like a 4-course meal with the beverage, don't forget that one, right? With the 4-course meal, then I know today I need to fill up the morning time bucket, the language arts bucket, a main course, and then some dessert. And those things happen in a day. We are rocking it, man. So thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. I hope that was helpful to have this framework, even if you're not using a gentle feast. I just love talking about this stuff. It has changed my life. It has changed my homeschool. I want to help other parents be able to do this as well. Think through your homeschool day. What are the buckets? If you like the 4-course meal and that's helpful, like for me, it was. So, okay, I need some appetizer. I need some language soup and salad. I need some main meaty stuff. And I need some dessert that we can end our day on a sweet note. And then I need to fill my own cup. Am I doing that every day? You can take what you're currently using and put it into that framework. Okay. So make this work for your family, but hopefully it's giving you some things to think about when it comes to your routine as well. So bye, everyone. It was so good to talk to you today. Hope to see you again soon. All right. Bye.
All right, let's look at the key takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, morning time matters. Start your day with beauty and connection to set a positive tone for the rest of your homeschool day. Number 2, integrate language arts as much as possible. Simplify your language arts by integrating writing into the main subjects that you're doing. Then you can just focus your language arts time on copy work, dictation, and grammar. Number 3, use living books and narration. Feed your child's mind with rich living books and use narration to develop critical thinking skills. Number 4, short, focused lessons. Keep lessons short and varied to maintain attention and prevent burnout. And then last of all,
Don't forget mother culture. Prioritize your own self-care and personal growth to ensure you have the energy and inspiration to lead your homeschool effectively. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this episode, please heart it down below and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment and let me know what you learned in today's episode. I'd love to hear from you.